All right, everybody. Places. Places.
Hey, Rob, my costume is pretty tight in the crotch region.
Now is not the time. All of our costumes are tight in the crotch region.
To be honest, I don't think my character's motivations are believable.
The store opens in 5 seconds. We can't do this right now.
And when is lunch? I've been hungry since breakfast. Craft services leaves a lot to be desired.
Get in place. Okay, everybody, here we go. And a 1, and a 2, and a 3.
Welcome to Rewind Video. I'm Bob.
I'm Rob.
And we love movies. Good ones, bad ones, old ones, new ones, quiet movies, loud movies. Rob, we've all heard the familiar saying, there's no business like the video rental business.
That's right. We know firsthand.
Yeah, because if there's anything better than being in the movies, it's being quite literally surrounded by them.
Absolutely.
Am I right?
All day long, every day, for the rest of my life, I think.
Of course, there are some people who would actually prefer performing on a stage or in front of a camera rather than just peddling rentals to local film buffs and families, but not everyone reaches for the stars like we do.
We literally reach for the stars, especially if the movie's up high.
Right, yeah. We got to pluck it from the top shelf. So our job here at Rewind Video is more than just ringing up customers who have chosen the latest new release from our shelves. We're also charged with updating the 6 films that occupy the staff recommendation shelf. Each time we choose a new selection of movies, we adhere to a theme. And this week's theme is show business.
I know you can't see it, but I'm doing jazz hands right now.
Right. They look great.
Yeah, thank you.
You've got a future in something.
Show business.
Right. So how did we arrive at this week's theme? I can't remember whose this was.
This was yours.
Oh, wow.
So I think you have to answer that question.
Yeah. Movies are wonderful. And
we love movies.
We do love movies.
The movies.
As we said at the top. And of course, show business is more than just movies, though. It's performing for an audience.
Yes.
And,
singing, dancing, bright lights, podcasts, all that stuff.
Right. Creating something that will entertain people. And naturally, there are a lot of movies that dive into that in interesting ways. I'm very excited by the 6 films we've chosen for tonight. I think they nail the show business theme.
They seem to encapsulate a lot of different kinds of show business. I mean, we've focused on the movie side of it, but I think that's a big part of show business. And obviously at the store, that's kind of what we focus on. So that's what we like.
It's true. But yes, you're also correct. We have more than just movie-themed movies this evening. But I think that one of the reasons that this was an interesting theme to me is that we're in an interesting time in the show business industry. We just came out of a long writer's strike and also long actors' strike. And those strikes tend to happen when the industry is changing. The last time I think we had an actors' strike, it was when the DVD scene was emerging. And now we have AI, which is somehow permeating the show business industry, especially movie making and filmmaking in general.
I mean, we put AI in charge of this podcast 3 or 4 episodes ago.
Right. We're not even here.
Yeah. We're busy stocking the shelves of the store.
Indeed. So it's just a fascinating time, and this is an ever-evolving industry, but why not take an hour and talk about some movies that celebrate what makes show business, if nothing else, compelling.
Yes, compelling, unique.
Yeah, not always great. I think we have some films tonight that show kind of the seedy underside.
We definitely do.
Well,
the people that make these movies are part of show business, and so they are quick to dispel the myths because they know it's bullshit because they're in the industry.
Yes,
in one way or another.
Yes. Well, good. I think we have a lot to talk about and some great movies to discuss. So why don't you kick us off with your first pick?
Okay, I'm gonna go hard in the paint to start us off. I'm gonna begin with the movie Hearts of Darkness, a filmmaker's apocalypse.
Boy, what a fraught production this film was.
This is filed under Travel for Maniacs. Here's the back of the box. A chronicle of the production problems, including bad weather, actors' health, war near the filming locations, and more, which plagued the filming of Apocalypse Now, increasing costs and nearly destroying the life and career of Francis Ford Coppola. Tagline, "The magic and madness of making Apocalypse Now." So this is a documentary about the making of that movie, which is probably the most infamous movie production of all time.
My God, I had known that it was troublesome, but
yeah,
holy hell,
it had a reputation even while it was happening. You know, people, a lot of it was, you know, in the press. Not all of it was true, but like there was, you know, they were reporting on the production as it was happening. But once this movie came out in 1991, you got like a real look at the absolute madness that this movie was.
Yeah.
There's a quote from Francis Ford Coppola early in the movie, which I think kind of encapsulates the whole thing going on here. It is, "We were in the jungle. There were too many of us. We had access to too much money, too much equipment, and little by little, we went insane."
That sums it up.
That pretty much sums it up. This movie is a look at all the ways a movie production can go wrong. One of the problems was the bad luck with the weather. A typhoon hit the Philippines where they were making this movie. And at first they're like, we can shoot through it.
Until they couldn't.
Yeah, eventually they had to shut down production, which lasted for 2 months because of the rain and because the typhoon destroyed pretty much all the sets that they had already built. So they took 2 months off, which is one of the reasons that this movie took over a year to make when it was only supposed to take 4 months. And somehow during this 2-month hiatus where they weren't shooting the movie, Coppola still couldn't figure out what the movie was about or how it would end. And like nobody had any fucking clue at any point, it seems like, while they were making it, what was going on. Like, what is the movie we're making here?
And it's amazing that they ended up with the movie they did, which is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
And doesn't feel like it was without an ending into production. But yeah, when you know the facts, it blows your mind.
I mean, they simply had no idea like what was gonna happen. They're just like, yeah, we're just gonna like jump into it and see what goes on. Plus, they had like the classic showbiz problem of the prima donna actor.
Oh yeah,
who was Marlon Brando, who like refused to budge from his schedule that was set.
Yeah,
Martin Sheen had a psychotic breakdown and like had a heart attack, which like really almost killed him.
Right.
And he was only 36. Like, he wasn't an old man.
Yeah.
This movie, like, pushed him to the brink of death.
Yes.
He even had last rites. Like, that's how bad off he was. The helicopters they had were owned by the Philippine Army, and sometimes they would just be like, hey, we have to take your helicopter or take our helicopters for this battle we're fighting. And they'd just be like completely fucked. They'd be like, well, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to make this movie with no helicopters?
We need your helicopters.
And so like almost nothing went right for this whole movie. And but in a way it was Coppola like staging the production of Apocalypse Now as the Vietnam War.
Yes.
You know, it was like barely planned. There was no one that really knew how it was going to end or even what the end goal really was. They're like, we're just going to do it and see what happens.
Quite a parallel.
Yeah,
right?
A lot of helicopters. But I thought it was telling that the movie, how do you pronounce it? Aguirre?
Yes.
The Wrath of God was a major influence here on Coppola for this because like it's a movie about people going to the jungle and going crazy.
Yes.
And so it's like, well, yeah, of course this was bound to happen. Like he manifested all this craziness. He made it happen. Yes. And you can see him do it in the movie.
You can. I couldn't help but to wonder as I was watching this, what would have happened if this movie was being made today? Because it's rather extraordinary that they shot this where they did at the time and really committed to being in this location that felt authentic to what they were looking to capture. And, you know, there's certain things you can't plan for. Of course, weather and, the locals needing their helicopters back.
You can plan for that, actually.
I guess you can.
You can go somewhere where you have use of the helicopters.
Right. But, you know, I just don't think – I think this was made during a moment in time when filmmaking would be subject to some of these challenges, and we've found ways to mitigate them since then.
I was going to say – this couldn't happen today because it definitely happened at a period of time where guys like Francis Ford Coppola could be like, give me full control. Or actually, he used his own money to start this.
Yes.
So like a lot of this is just like, but he had the money because of The Godfather and whatever. I was going to say this could only happen at this moment in time where guys like him had this kind of power. But there was just a story in the news recently about Netflix who paid some guy $55 million to make this TV show. And he spent a lot of it on like cryptocurrency and Rolls Royces and stuff.
Yeah.
And they never got a show. They paid him $55 million. They never got a show. Like he filmed a bunch of stuff and never turned into a TV show. So like this stuff kind of still happens.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, you feel like there would be a way to keep filmmakers in check, but I mean that isn't even really getting at the real problems with this production.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's certainly a component of it. I mean,
Yeah.
Francis Ford Coppola fortunately turned in a masterpiece at the end, but by almost happenstance.
Yeah. Just who even knows how it happened? And like
Yeah.
watching this documentary, you can't really tell how it happened.
No, you can't.
Even up to the very end, Coppola is like, he has no clue. And that kind of just like shows you in show business, you never really know.
No.
You never really know. Like Coppola the whole time is saying like, this film is no good. It's a piece of shit. Like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
I'm trying to do this grandiose thing. I'm trying to say something important about an important thing, and I'm not, and I'm making a complete mockery of it. This is a piece of shit, and even then, like, and it's a disaster on every level, production wise, and still somehow something came out of it on the other side.
Do you think it's a case of fake it till you make it with Coppola in this state of mind, or
I think he was on the edge.
Yeah. I mean,
he was just. You see the script notes and stuff that he's making, you know, and it's just like he's rewritten every line 8 or 9 or 10 or 15 times.
Right. And
it's like at some point it's like, well, what's the line?
Yeah.
Like, what are you writing here?
Do all of these notes connect to each other in a way that, you know, results in a coherent narrative?
Yeah. And plus you're working with guys like Dennis Hopper,
Yeah.
who's completely out of his mind at this point.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is just like a period, and like they're in the jungle and like nobody's eating, or like they're all dehydrated probably, and it's 100 degrees and there's a typhoon rolling in. Like they've lost their minds, and they're just filming shit, and the whole movie's improvised.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy.
Insane as it sounds, I do think that we might not have gotten as great of a movie had things gone as well as the filmmakers would have liked them to, because part of the madness associated with how all of this unfolded contributes to the performances. And you know, I think that
you wouldn't get that
more
Martin
authentic
Sheen performance. You wouldn't get the Brando performance.
No.
I mean, Brando doesn't give that performance if he's not a lunatic. Mm-hmm. And he shows up to that crazy place that they're making this crazy movie.
Right.
But even so, like they came out on the other end of it with a great movie, but also it wiped out Coppola for decades financially.
Yes.
Like it was such a disaster, even though it was a successful movie, it just wiped him out. Yeah. It was just, and also like everybody was like a prisoner of the movie, as you know, that's what it seemed like. It seemed like everybody working on it was a prisoner, including Coppola. Yeah. He's like, I can't get out of this. He's like, we literally can't. I want to shut down production, but I can't. Yeah. Like the world falls apart if I do that. It's just insane. Like the whole thing is just insane. I have Hearts of Darkness rated as a 4-star movie, and I wanted to bring a matching Letterboxd review.
Oh, I love that.
That matches my star rating. This is from a Letterboxd user named Pube.
I can't wait to hear what Pube has to say.
Pube says, Eleanor Coppola needs to make one of these about 1996's Jack. Which I think would be fascinating. I don't know that movie exists, but
I'd watch it.
I would watch it for sure.
100%.
I think this is an essential companion piece to Apocalypse Now. It obviously is. It's one of the great documentaries about show business, and so I'm putting it on the shelf this week for Showbiz.
I would hope that if Eleanor Coppola made a documentary about Jack, that it would also still be called Hearts of Darkness. Man, fine pick. And such a great companion to a movie that we all know so well. To get a peek behind the curtain and understand what went into this, I think it makes you appreciate Apocalypse Now even more, and gives you perspective on the trials and tribulations associated with filmmaking that are probably not as uncommon as it seems like they are in this movie. You know, there are challenges in every production.
You heard all the stories about it, but you know, Go to the source.
Awesome pick. I'm surprised only 4 stars for you.
I never give 5 stars on a first date.
Well said. Well said. All right. I'm taking us to 2017, and I'm plucking this from the movies about movies about movies about movies section of the store. I'm choosing One Cut of the Dead for my first pick. Back of the box. An eccentric and determined director sets out to shoot a low-budget zombie film at an abandoned warehouse. Suddenly, the cast and crew find themselves in the middle of an actual zombie invasion. Delighted with the all-too-real turn of events, the director insists that the crew continue filming to capture the terror in all its glory. Now the actors must work together to escape this deranged filmmaker, or this may be their last performance. Tagline, don't stop shooting. Which, yeah.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah, don't, yeah.
Not in this case.
Get it all. So as much as I love horror, the zombie subgenre is not my favorite. Generally, I find them to be relatively one-note.
Have you brought a zombie movie to the table?
I don't think I have.
Oh, it was a vampire movie.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Close.
Yeah, it is close. But I think that generally speaking, zombie movies are, you know, we see life unfolding normally and then, oh shit, zombies are here. We're all going to die. And then most everyone dies. It's generally the same story over and over again. This, while having similar zombies have appeared out of nowhere tropes, definitely does something different. And in fact, I don't really want to spoil this for people who haven't seen it, so I'm gonna try and talk about this without getting into the interesting third act.
We might spoil it a little bit. It's going to be hard, I think, to really talk about it.
I agree. But yeah, it's a treat, and it's worth sticking through to the end. Back of the Box definitely tells the story. Zombie invasion happens while a film crew is shooting a zombie movie, but we also get the story of how the filming of said zombie movie came about. So this is definitely more than one story that we're being told here, and it's told in a somewhat non-linear way, but that's essential to how things unfold. This is a Japanese film from director Shinichiro Ueda, and the cast will be unknown to American audiences, but they're all great. And yeah, so why did I choose this? I love that performance is a big part of what makes this fun. So when the movie opens, the director is clearly disappointed at what he's getting at from the actors. They're on the 42nd take of a scene, and he can't get them to summon the sense of fear that he's looking for, which definitely feels like an homage to The Shining.
Yeah.
And then when the zombie invasion actually begins, we see the same actors actually fending for their life. Finally, they're behaving in the way that the director wanted them to be acting. And it explains why the director actually wanted to continue filming during the real zombie invasion. But performance is such a critical part of what he's after and what makes the story interesting. The filmmaking also pretty exhilarating. I think it straddles the line between feeling like a documentary and a found footage movie, kind of.
Yeah, you know, I mean, are we talking strictly the first act right now?
Yeah, so for context, the first act of the movie is essentially the zombie film that is being filmed.
I think we should say that, like, if you are really like worried about spoilers, like, you might be spoiled a little bit in the next 4 minutes or so.
Yeah. So if you want to go in blind, now is the time to get out. But if you're curious, stick with us because
if you want to go in blind, you shouldn't listen to people talk about the movie.
Right. Just trust us that you should see it.
We're not going to ruin it.
No.
Yeah, we're going to give away some stuff, I think.
Yeah.
So what was the question again before we got into all of that?
So we were talking about the feeling of the filmmaking, which for that first act definitely has, you know, a low budgety, found footagey, and almost kind of documentary and quality to it.
Actually, I thought it was going to be something else for a minute because, I mean, I saw what they were doing after a couple of minutes, but then I thought it was going to go in a different direction from there.
Yes.
Because of the way that the director was talking to the camera.
Yes.
You're like, okay, there's another level here. What I thought was going to happen was we were going to go behind the camera and there actually was going to be zombies for real.
Yes.
Like, besides the fake for real zombies.
Yes.
So I thought we were going to go an extra level, and then that wasn't quite where it went. I didn't I didn't realize this was like a full-blown comedy.
No, I didn't either.
I was going in ready for a zombie movie.
And it is funny. I mean, there's definitely
funny.
Some laugh out loud stuff. And I mean, it is in Japanese, it's subtitled, but we've learned many times before that, yeah, subtitled movies can still be pretty hilarious, and this is no exception. But yeah, in the second act, we skip back in time a month and learn about how this movie came about, the director was brought on board, and really it's about a half hour of pre-production. So we learn about the actors that are starring in this film and everything that goes into bringing it to life. And then the third act is just bananas.
It's so much fun to watch, and it immediately begs a rewatch once you've seen the end of this movie.
100%. I was fully convinced that in spite of the low budgety feel during the first act of this movie, when we're seeing the zombie invasion take place, that's actually what happened. I mean, like, had no idea that anything else was amiss or, afoot.
Yeah.
And then, later in the movie, we learn that it's all a big production.
It actually is just a movie.
Yeah, it is just a movie. And so you really get a greater sense of the magic of movie making when you see the third act and how they pulled all of this off. And
you brought up performance too, and the performance in the first 30 minutes is so much. All of them are so much better when after you've seen the end of the movie, you're like, oh, now it all comes together.
Yes,
and it even makes it even better after you've seen.
It really does. It really does. So, as it relates to show business, this movie, like I said, is a celebration of filmmaking. I would say even especially independent filmmaking. And, on productions like that, you have a small crew, you don't have a lot of money to spend, you don't necessarily have accomplished actors, and you're solving problems on the fly, which we see a lot of in this.
Yes.
and it really shows, I think this movie shows an understanding of how productions like that unfold and what makes it great. And a look behind the camera is not something that we as audiences always see, but is really rewarding in this instance. So, this is a film about the magic of movie making. Like I mentioned, it's told in a nonlinear style, but while I normally don't love that, I think that it's essential here, and it really pays off. This was shot for a budget of $25,000 over the course of 10 days. It grossed more than $25 million, which is quite a return on investment. So definitely a success. Critics and audiences alike love this. Has 100% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Richard Kuipers from Variety wrote of this movie in his review that it's a marvelously inventive horror comedy that breathes new life into the zombie genre. And he attributed the movie's success to its irresistibly bouncy spirit. It positively sparkles with infectious, come on everyone, let's put on a show enthusiasm. And I think in spite of the fact that movie making is definitely its own facet of show business, again, performance and putting on a show is fundamental to what makes show business so wonderful, and we get that here.
Absolutely. And this reminded me a lot, for obvious reasons, of the movie I brought to the shelf not too long ago, Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes.
Yes.
Which is another Japanese one-shot movie. But it reminded me of that in the sense that the way they made these movies is interesting. And especially this one. This is a movie about making movies. And the way they made this movie is interesting. So I would like to see the footage of that. Yes. How do they make this movie? So I want to go back another step.
Yeah. And you get a little bit of that, but certainly not enough. And it does bear mentioning that, it's called One Cut of the Dead. The zombie movie that we see unfold in the first act of the movie is all one shot, and it actually was performed in one shot. There's no movie making magic here. They did it in one shot, which is amazing.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So 37 minutes uncut, and it's wonderful. That's awesome. So I'm throwing this on the shelf as my first pick for the show business theme, and I'd encourage everyone to give it a shot if you haven't seen it already.
Okay, well, I'm going to take us from a documentary about the making of Apocalypse Now to a comedic riff on the making of Apocalypse Now.
Yes.
My next choice is Tropic Thunder from 2008.
God, this movie's so much fun.
This is next to Popeye in the forearm porn section of the store. The back of the box, very long. Vietnam veteran Four-Leaf Taybac's memoir, Tropic Thunder, is being made into a film, but director Damien Cockburn can't control the cast of prima donnas. Behind schedule and over budget, Cockburn is ordered by studio executive to get filming back on track or risk its cancellation. On Taybac's advice, Cockburn drops the actors into the middle of the jungle to film the remaining scenes, but unbeknownst to the actors and production, the group have been dropped in the middle of the Golden Triangle, the home of heroin-producing gangs. Tagline is short and to the point. Get some.
Why not?
Why
Sure.
not? This is directed by Ben Stiller, who I think is like low-key been one of like the most talented people in Hollywood for like 30 years.
He really has. And I feel like he has a finger on the pulse of comedy, unlike a lot of directors.
Yeah, he doesn't really do a lot of comedy now.
No.
Not maybe because no one is, but he's been doing some like good TV. He did that Severance show. He did that show about the guys who broke out of prison. But like his movies, like Zoolander is a fucking classic. Cable Guy has been on the shelf before. Rowdy Bites, very 90s. So like, yeah, I mean, he can, and he's an actor and he's great in this movie. He's just like, I don't know, he can do everything. So,
yeah.
But all of that back of the box aside, this movie is just a spoof of showbiz itself, like movie making in general, but just like showbiz people.
Oh yeah.
Mostly how ridiculous actors can be, but like everybody gets it.
Yes.
From this movie. You got agents, directors, executives, consultants, special effects guys, assistants don't look good in this movie.
Nobody does.
I'm a fan of how they really take a shot at method acting, which I've always thought is like the most ridiculous thing. It's just totally stupid.
Well, I got to ask, because you brought up the subject of method acting, and in this film, the way it is skewered is with Robert Downey Jr. wearing blackface for his character. I mean, it's such a great satirization of this insane practice. But I keep asking myself, if they were making this movie today, would they still do that? And I love that they did it, but I don't know.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I don't think you would. I don't think you would now.
No.
But I mean, I think this might be the most balls to the wall comedic character of all time. Like, I don't think anybody's ever come close to this, right?
No.
And I mean, the things he's doing with his face, his voice, his body, thematically, it's just off the charts.
Yes.
And it's all funny. It's funny
fucking
as fuck.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's legitimately amazing. But it could be easy to find offense in this, right?
Yes.
For a lot of reasons. And like, especially this movie as a whole, there's things you could find offense in. Like the Simple Jack character has a lot of very problematic.
Oh yeah.
But this made me think of an interview that I saw recently with Anthony Jeselnik, who knows a thing or two about being offensive.
He does.
But like it was an interview he was giving, and his point he was making was about comedians these days, who I'm sure have always existed. But he was talking about people who are like, who think their job is to be offensive.
Yes.
And he's like, no, he's like, your job is to be funny. He's like, if you want to be offensive, your job is to get away with it. You know what I mean? He's like, the things that Jeselnik will talk about in his act are like horrifying if you think about it. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Whatever they are. But he's like, your job is to make it funny and make people laugh at the joke and let them get away with it too.
Yes.
You know, that's what your job is. And like this movie does things, you're like, it's offensive, but like they got away with it. In my opinion, they get away with it.
They do get away with it.
That's the way I look at it.
They do get away with it. And you're right. It is such a bold, ballsy film. I mean, top to bottom. Not just with Robert Downey Jr.'s character, but yeah, with Simple Jack. Just some of the things I mean, even Jack Black's character. There's so much.
Jack Black is a treasure.
He is. He really is.
But yeah, it's just so goddamn funny that like as an audience, you're just like, well, you can kind of do whatever you want, you know, as long as you're being funny. I was wondering too, like, did this movie kind of save Tom Cruise's career?
Oh, that's a great question.
Or at least his reputation.
That's a great question.
Because he was still Tom Cruise.
Yes.
He was still in the Mission Impossible movies or whatever. But, you know, at this point of his career, he had a reputation as this like kook, like basically like this is a couple years after the couch thing, and he got in a fight with Matt Lauer about psychiatry or something on TV.
Sure, yeah.
And so like he had kind of become like this like guy who's like, yeah, it's Tom Cruise, but like he's gone crazy now, right? And I feel like when this movie came out, people were like, well, he can poke fun at himself, you know?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
And he's never done anything close to this.
Well, when can you... I have a hard time even remembering the last time he wasn't the star of the movie. And he is not that here. You know, he's not on the front of the box.
He's not the star. He's a scumbag.
Oh, yeah.
He's disgusting. He's horrible. He's ugly.
Yes.
And, like, Tom Cruise is never that.
No.
Not even comedically, ever. Like, unless I'm, like, forgetting something.
I don't think you are.
And so, like... And Tom Cruise doesn't do anything that hasn't been calculated... to like the 15th decimal point.
Right.
And so like, was this a move where he was like, I got to do something that like really like makes me look bad in order to...
Well, I think we live in a time now where the Tom Cruise brand is as refined as it's ever been. And I don't think he was there yet when he made this movie. I don't think that he had carved out a place for himself in the world, because after this he does Valkyrie, Night and Day. There is Ghost Protocol, but then Rock of Ages. And it isn't until...
Rock of Ages was a little bit kind of a scumbag. Wasn't he like a heroin addict or something?
Sure, yeah. Okay. I don't think it's until we get to like 2015 with Mission Impossible Rogue Nation that it's... From there on out, he is in blockbuster movies only. He is the star, and
he's also like barely human.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, this is before we got to that point. Yeah. But it's such a crazy turn for Tom Cruise.
Yeah, and it's also fucking hilarious.
Yeah, it is.
It's so funny.
It's so funny.
But I also don't know that I don't know if Tom Cruise is a real enough person to play this role. Like, I don't know if that he understands why it's funny.
I don't know. It's so hard to even single him out, because every actor in this movie... there isn't a scene where you're disappointed that you're spending time with one of these characters, because all of them are great.
Yeah, so deep.
Nick Nolte. I mean, how the fuck is Nick Nolte
Matthew
funny in this?
Bill
Matthew
Hader,
McConaughey,
like, back in the day.
Oh my god.
It's such a great cast. This is a 5-star movie to me.
Yep.
One of my all-time favorites.
I agree.
Found a 5-star review on Letterboxd from the user Simon Ramshaw. Kind of like my Catcher in the Rye.
Yes.
I don't know if it's that for me, but I'm definitely putting it on the shelf this week for Showbiz.
Boy, what a fun pick. This is a movie that is infinitely rewatchable. It's great. I watched it a month ago, and it was like the first time. It just stays funny.
Yeah, it's an all-time classic. I don't know that we get a lot of comedies like this anymore.
No,
I don't know if there's a lot of comedies like this. In general, there's some genuine action scenes in this.
Yeah, I hope we get back to this.
Yeah,
this time, because it's a fun place to live.
Yeah, Ben Stiller, go back to comedies.
Yeah, please do. Well, I summoned a 13-year-old who. Ventured in the store and had him escort me to the I heard you like boobs section of Rewind Video for my second pick. This is from 1995. The movie is Showgirls.
It is.
It sure is.
It is.
Back of the box. A young drifter named Nomi arrives in Las Vegas to become a dancer and soon sets about clawing and pushing her way to become a top showgirl. Tagline, beyond your wildest dreams, beyond your wildest fantasies.
All right.
Yeah. All right. So, Rob, I chose this movie because I hadn't seen it, and I knew it would fit the theme. I'm glad I watched it. I don't know what I was expecting, but what a ride.
I don't know what I was expecting either, and I'm not really sure what I saw.
No, neither am I. Showgirls comes to us by way of Paul Verhoeven. It's his third movie to make the staff recommendation shelf. No other director has that claim to fame yet. I don't
Congratulations,
know.
Mr. Verhoeven.
Yeah, I don't know what it says about us that we've recommended 3 Verhoeven movies, but here we are. For the uninitiated, we get Elizabeth Berkley here in the role of Nomi, Gina Gershon, and Kyle MacLachlan. I think those are the 3 main recognizable actors. And this film is show business from start to finish, following Berkley's trajectory as she arrives in Las Vegas as a broke stripper and then kind of works her way up the food chain to be the premier showgirl of one of the biggest shows in the city. By the way,
Quickly.
Quickly. Yeah, she doesn't waste a lot of time. This is a pretty great Vegas movie, I think, you know?
Well, in a way. You know, it has a certain view of Vegas. I don't know that there's a lot of realistic. It has a realistic view of like how Vegas shows work.
No, I don't think so either.
Because she's in like a topless show. Gina Gershon is like this star of the topless show.
Yeah,
that's like a dance show inside of the the Stardust Casino.
Yeah,
and they kind of treat her like she's like a real star who's like come to do this Vegas show at this like
an attraction. Like people come to see her.
Yeah, the Stardust is a shitball casino. I'm pretty sure it was a shitball casino in the 90s. And like the way these shows work, especially like the topless dance shows in places like the Stardust, is like they're sparsely attended and like they give away free tickets and like they act like she's like this giant star that people are flying in from all around the world to see her tits.
So you and I have both been to Vegas many times. Yeah. I've never been to a show like this. Do they still exist?
Well, I used to live in Vegas.
Yeah.
And they did exist when I lived there. Yeah. And I attended a topless show. I didn't know it was a topless show going in.
Oh, wow.
Got some free tickets with some friends. We were like, wouldn't this be hilarious to go? And it was a vampire show. Yeah, I believe it was called Fang or something.
Okay.
And, yeah, and then like all of a sudden people started taking their tops off.
Wow.
But yeah, it's like, I mean, it's not like a high-end production.
No,
but this movie made it seem like it was like if you're in one of these shows, it's a big deal to the point where they're like, when she quits, they're like, "Oh, we'll get Paula Abdul or Janet Jackson." It's like, no, you're not. What are you talking about?
Yeah. So we follow Elizabeth Berkley's ascent through this movie. There's a lot that goes down. This movie is full of bad people doing bad things. The only character who's truly good from start to finish is the woman who gives Berkley a place to stay when she arrives in Vegas. And that character meets a pretty tragic end. This film, incidentally, ruined Elizabeth Berkley's career. She never really got another shot in Hollywood after this.
I don't know that I'd agree with that statement.
Oh, yeah? You don't think that the film ruined her career? Do you think that she ruined her own career?
I have some opinions on her acting. Yeah. I don't think she's a good actor. I think she's Jessie Spano.
So we're gonna get into this. We're gonna get into this.
I want to get into this now, later, whenever. Like I could talk for 5 hours about her performance in this movie.
It's fucking bonkers. So why did I choose this? I'll be honest. I don't know. You know how some days, occasionally, you're craving like a cheap hot dog, like the $1.50 ones they sell at Costco, and it hits the spot. I think this is kind of like that. It's not good, but under the right circumstances, there's something oddly satisfying about it.
This is a 4-star movie for me.
Okay.
It's too trashy and weird for me to not love it.
Yeah.
But I still don't really know what I saw. And first of all, I don't believe Elizabeth Berkley is a very good actor at all. She basically took the character from the I'm So Excited episode of Saved by the Bell and turned it into a stripper.
Yeah.
And I chose to read her performance, her lack of acting ability as character traits. And so like whenever her character would just like fly off the handle like inappropriately, like to the point where like I don't think Elizabeth Berkley like really understands what's going on in the scene. I chose to view it as her character just being a fucking crazy person. And if you look at it like that, it's a different view of the movie.
Well, okay, so I'm going to jump ahead to some of my feelings on this because I think that we have to talk about this because her performance is insane and also objectively bad. I mean, she's like,
but I think that's the point. I
agree. I think it's intentional.
I think Elizabeth. This movie is about Elizabeth Berkley and her career.
Interesting. So
That's a meta reading of it. That's what I got. I felt like Paul Verhoeven was playing a joke on Elizabeth Berkley, and he would never admit to it. But I think like this all was a big joke on her.
Wow. I didn't take it that way. Here's what I thought. I thought, okay, Paul Verhoeven knows how to make a good movie with solid performances, smart dialogue, and a compelling story. Joe Esterhaus knows how to write one. He did it with Basic Instinct.
Well, debatable about him.
He's had some.
He might have just like cashed in on like one good script.
perhaps. But I don't think that Verhoeven just forgot how to make a good movie when he made this. I think that everything is intentional, and I think you could make a case that this movie understands that the show business industry is often quite ugly. So if you're going to tell the story of a woman's journey into the belly of this business, the depiction deserves to be flawed, bad, gross. Yeah, and it would feel inauthentic for it to be elevated to something incredible when no, this is all it's trash. These people live in shit.
Yeah, it's supposed to be trash.
It is, yeah.
It's a comment on the movie business. It's a comment on American life, which Verhoeven is a big fan of trashing.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know. I think just if this movie was made by somebody else, would we have a different view of it? I'm not really sure.
I don't even know who could have made this apart from a B-movie director who we've never heard of, and it would have been a different movie then. I actually think that Verhoeven's making, this has a reputation for being campy. But
and it definitely is.
And it is. I don't know that it's accidentally campy. I think that it
definitely not.
No, yeah. It seems intentional from start to finish. And this isn't even my favorite movie about this industry. Well, it's not exactly the same as being a Vegas showgirl. There's a movie from 2022 called Pleasure that's about a woman's journey into the porn industry. That's a decidedly better movie than this one. It's trying to be a better movie. This, I think, there's a lot of commentary here. Showgirls is pure spectacle, and it's a movie about spectacle. The film itself is a spectacle.
Yeah, I mean, is it a comedy?
Maybe.
Was Verhoeven making a comedy? He might have been.
He might have been.
But what makes me think that is the sex scene in particular. In the pool.
Yes.
And, and this is why I think that Elizabeth Berkley was not in on the joke. Where I have to think that she thought it was a sexy scene. I
wonder. Yeah.
It's not.
Oh, no.
It's hilarious.
It's hilarious.
And
it's violent.
Right. And I don't think that she's playing it as a joke. And I think Verhoeven was yeah, that's hot. Keep doing that. And and it's not. And that's why I think partially it's kind of a joke on her.
It might be.
I don't know how I feel about that, but it's also very funny.
So, there's a lot about her performance throughout, including that sex scene, that had me scratching my head until we learn near the end of the movie that, okay, she comes from a very troubled background. And I have to believe that upon knowing that about the character, when she saw this script, she probably decided, okay, well, I'm going to build into my performance this violence and aggression that
she has a defiant attitude to every line that she says, even when it's completely inappropriate.
Yeah, I definitely think that there were some wrong decisions in terms of building her character performance around, this truth that we ultimately learn. And yeah, I do have to wonder when Verhoeven saw that.
I mean, he cast her. He knew this guy's not a rookie director.
It's true. Now, this was a hard role to cast. They wanted Drew Barrymore for it. They wanted Madonna for the Gina Gershon role. Most people passed on the part, mostly because of how much nudity there is. I mean, she's naked for most of the movie, and that's an uncomfortable thing for a lot of actresses. So,
once you have Elizabeth Berkley, what else can you make besides this?
Right. Verhoeven talked about her as a newcomer when he cast her, and it's like, did you not see Saved by the Bell? Like,
something tells me he had.
Yeah, I don't think he had. Maybe it didn't. Foreign markets, perhaps it wasn't on TV. But yeah, I don't know. This film definitely a curiosity to me. I think it belongs in the staff recommendation shelf because I want to hear what more people think about it. I want to keep talking about it. It's
definitely been reclaimed. I mean, I don't know what it is on Letterboxd, but it's got a high rating. Like people have come back to this and embraced it for something than what people thought it was in the mid 90s.
Oh yeah, it's got a 3.3 on Letterboxd today. It swept the 16th annual Razzie Awards, and Paul Verhoeven turned up in person to accept Worst Director and Worst Picture. He was the first director to ever do that.
I mean, I kind of feel like he's like, yeah, that was the point.
Yeah, I agree.
You know?
I think he's saying, okay, well, you guys think this is shit, but you're kind of making my point for me.
I was trying to make the biggest piece of garbage you've ever seen, and he did.
Yeah.
And to me, it works.
So one review that made me laugh was from the user Julius, who gave this movie 5 stars on Letterboxd. And he said, the people who think this is dumb are the same people who think Inception is smart. and I do think that it, I think it deserves a watch.
I mean, let's put it this way. I definitely thought about this a lot more than I've ever thought about Inception.
Fuck yeah. Yeah, so it's going on the shelf. If you haven't seen it, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people who have seen clips of this movie, but we haven't seen it start to finish.
What are you implying with that?
Well, the same thing that was true of Basic Instinct. I think there are scenes that have a reputation that are probably bigger than the film itself, but it's I'd say put it in.
Yeah, I recommend it.
I do
think
too.
More strongly than you even.
Yeah, no, I do. I'm not sure I'm ready to give it a star rating yet because it's still very fresh. And
it takes a while to digest it.
It does. Yeah. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. Okay. I'm going to take us in a different direction. I'm going to take us back to the 50s, 1952.
All right.
With the movie Singin' in the Rain.
Also full of nudity.
A lot of nudity.
Yeah.
This is in the musical meteorology section of the store. Back of the box, short and sweet. 1927 Hollywood, a silent film production company and cast make a difficult transition to sound.
That's
Tagline, what a glorious feeling.
I like that.
Yeah. Everything's shortened to the point.
Yes.
That's how they did it back in the day.
Yes.
Singin' in the Rain is one of the great Hollywood musicals. I think that's just kind of an accepted thing. Mm-hmm. Stars Gene Kelly, Debbie Reynolds, Donald O'Connor, and Gene Hagen as the Hollywood stars of the silent era who are kind of making a movie at the exact moment that movies were transitioning to talkies.
Okay.
It was like literally like, hey, we're making this movie, but this other movie came out with sound. We're doing that now. Like literally, like it was that quick. And I don't know if that's really how quick it happened, but maybe.
Maybe.
I think it's one of those things that's like, we can do it. Like we're an idiot if we don't.
Right. Yeah.
So they're forced to adapt to an entirely new showbiz on the fly.
Yes.
And including one of them who is very ill-suited to be in the movies with sound because of her voice and the way she talks, essentially. This was another classic film that was on my watch list since I've had a watch list for decades.
Yeah. Likewise. Yeah. I've always known about this movie. How can you not?
Everyone says it's great.
I've never watched it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know it's great. Should I watch it? I did. And I got to say, it was delightful.
Yeah.
Delightful.
It's a fun movie.
It's a fun movie. It is exactly what you want it to be.
Yeah.
But the stars of this era where the movie takes place in the 20s, they were kind of the first generation of Hollywood movie stars.
Yeah. And
they created the modern showbiz celebrity.
Yes.
Like that's where all these tropes come from. The red carpet was like a new cool thing. And their celebrity identities, which were like fake,
right.
which are only really now coming out of, now with social media and the internet, it's kind of like people like we know what their real lives are like more than we really have. But like 20 years ago, some of that stuff was still just bullshit, you know? Like, I love how Gene Kelly is discovered in this movie.
Yes.
Where he's just kind of a stunt man, and the guy's like, "Hey, I like your stunts. You want to be a movie star?"
Right.
Yeah,
sure.
And like that's probably how it happened back then, for the most part. They're like, "Well, we got to find somebody to be in this picture. Well, this guy's over here."
Yeah, it reminds you that the idea of casting for a part and, you know, what we're now used to with auditioning and things like that wasn't always the case.
No.
You know, it was a lot more organic at a time.
Did you notice he did the first Tom Cruise who jumps off a cliff on a motorcycle?
Yes.
Stunt?
Yeah.
But like a lot of musicals of the time and musicals in general, it's fairly light on plot.
Right.
You know, they're transitioning from one era to the next. They sing and dance about it, which is great. I mean, the cast is great and fun. Gene Kelly is like definitely the star of the show. He's so charismatic, and I didn't know before.
Yeah.
Everyone's great in this movie. The guy Donald O'Connor, who I'd never heard of before.
No,
he's like kind of like the sidekick.
Yeah.
He does a make 'em laugh number in the movie,
yeah.
which it's pretty good. He's being funny, dancing around, but then he does 2 backflips in a row off the wall while he's singing and dancing, which I had to rewatch like 10 times.
Yeah.
I was like, this guy really did this?
He did it, and you know, I was fascinated by this film and looking up just facts about it, and I ran across a bit of trivia regarding the fact that when he was filming this movie, that guy smoked like 4 packs of cigarettes a day. And so not only is it physically taxing for anyone, but for him especially, it was took quite the toll.
And like there are several dance numbers. We even get a sexy dance at the end.
Sexy dance.
It's not quite Showgirls, but it's 1952 sexy.
Perhaps far from it. Yeah.
There's a lot of tap dancing, and it made me realize that like the reason I like tap dancing is because you get dancing and percussion at the same time.
You do.
So it's like dancing and drums. Like I love drums. So that's great. You get a lot of comedy beats in the choreography, which I'm a huge fan of.
Right.
And yeah, so this is just like this movie was I wouldn't say a surprise, but it was fun to go to and actually check out after I've been meaning to after all these years.
It was a surprise for me because and I spent some time thinking about why I was caught off guard by it. And I think that the reason I perhaps avoided it for so long is because just as somebody as anyone who is a fan of movies is, you've seen that scene of the Singin' in the Rain scene probably countless times. And for whatever reason, I inferred from that, this movie has nothing to offer me. and I was wrong, you know, and yeah, it's worth the trouble to sit through the rest of it because
absolutely.
It's not trouble at all. It's a joyful watch.
It really is. It's a total joy. I gave it 4 stars. As did Letterboxd reviewer Olivia.
Okay.
Her review is this. Yeah, they were singing and dancing in the rain, but also not in the rain. Cool.
Accurate.
So yeah, as I said, this is a classic for a reason. So enjoyable. Fantastic look at old-timey showbiz.
Okay.
And so I'm throwing it up on the shelf this week for Showbiz.
Yeah, you know, we think of show business as it relates to the world we currently live in, and often forget that show business was a different animal back, you know, a decade before, and then a decade before that. Like it's always evolving, and this movie definitely reminds you that it used to be something very different, but that very different thing was also pretty wonderful. Well, fine pick, and a classic for a reason. I am going to round us out with another movie that I think is doing something similar to Hearts of Darkness in terms of just turning the lens on movie making in general and more of a factual take than a fictional one. My final pick is Los Angeles Plays Itself from 2003. Back of the box synopsis here. From its distinctive neighborhoods to its architectural homes, Los Angeles has been the backdrop to countless movies. In this dazzling work, Anderson takes viewers on a whirlwind tour through the metropolis's real and cinematic history, investigating the myriad stories and legends that have come to define it, and meticulously, judiciously revealing the real city that lives beneath. There is no tagline here. I don't think you need one. If the showbiz industry is a solar system, the sun that all of the planets revolve around, I think, is Los Angeles.
It is. Nowadays.
Yeah, this movie celebrates that city, and it's more of a video essay than a documentary. This movie uses primarily shots from movies filmed in LA to provide a commentary around what makes this city such a special part of the entertainment industry. It comes to us by way of a guy named Tom Anderson, a Los Angeles resident, filmmaker, and critic who has a unique and informed perspective on the city and its history and how became such an icon of show business. So
he's very protective of it.
He is, and sensitive, I think, to some of facets of the identity that the city has taken on.
I think that makes sense. If you live somewhere, like, you have a much better understanding of things.
Oh yeah,
than people outside do, and so when they're shown in a certain way, you're like, well, that's not really what it's like.
Right. Yeah, this is a long film, and it digs deep into all the things that make LA special. I do think it could have been a little bit shorter, in spite of how much I appreciated the story he's telling.
Any movie that's almost 3 hours long can be shorter, but at the same time, I don't know that it necessarily is out of place here. This is the sort of movie that you want to be 3 hours long.
I don't disagree. Yeah, I mean, the thesis of this movie is essentially Los Angeles is the most photographed city in the world. Let's understand why. Yeah. And you definitely do. I was surprised by how much of the filmmaking industry and history he dives into. It's not just contemporary films, but every decade that Los Angeles has been relevant to show business. Why did I choose this? You know, we've talked a lot about cities and settings in films playing a character, and Los Angeles is a returning character like no other. For a theme about show business, I think you have to acknowledge and celebrate this place where movie making is truly the identity of the city. There's a lot of layers to the Los Angeles onion, and I was impressed with how deep Tom Anderson goes. There are a few stones left unturned as it relates to what makes LA LA, but
well, nobody really knows.
That's true.
You know, that's hard. It's one of those hard things to pin down because it's such a new city that's changed so much.
Yeah,
you know, it was a brand new city when Hollywood started, quote unquote Hollywood started,
right?
And so it was like a Wild West town, and then it was the movie business all of a sudden, and like the movie business has changed 15 times since that started. And even calling it L.A., this guy's not a fan of.
No, he's not.
So it's always Los Angeles.
Always Los Angeles, yes.
Which, I don't know, it's a really interesting look at it from like a very specific perspective, which is like this person, which right. I kind of dig, which is it's a YouTube video essay.
It is.
You know?
It is.
It reminded me of, have you seen the history of the Seattle Mariners?
No.
It's like a 4-hour documentary movie, but it's fascinating, and also it's the Seattle Mariners. Who gives a fuck, right?
Right. Yeah.
But it's 4 hours long, and it's incredible,
captivating from start to finish.
And this is kind of the same thing, where it's just and it's not necessarily something you want to watch all at the same in one sitting,
and you don't have to.
This is there's chapters, and it's whatever. It's like a background thing.
Yeah,
you can think about other things. You can start thinking about Los Angeles, this, and there's a restaurant in whatever. I don't know. It's a very interesting experience.
This movie also puts a lot of films into context in a different way. I loved what he had to say about Rebel Without a Cause, which we've talked about on the podcast before. You know, a lot of people have a really negative opinion of Los Angeles. I've always loved it. I've never lived there, of course. I've visited it quite a few times. This film made me appreciate it even more, just how much there is to appreciate and understand as a person who loves watching movies.
Yeah. I mean, they say Los Angeles is like 10 or 12 different cities. You just have to figure out which 3 or 4 you're going to be part of.
Right. And that was one of the parts of this that fascinated me, because he talks about how Los Angeles is captured when it's supposed to be Los Angeles, and how different that is from a city like New York and the way that the city is represented. But it can't be ignored that Los Angeles is also any number of other cities when it needs to be. And what a fascinating story, you know?
Yeah.
Anderson at one point talks about how essentially, you know, when you show New York in movies, it's almost impossible to not recognize what part of New York you're in, and you've probably seen this, you know, side of the city. But Los Angeles doesn't have it. It's mysterious. It doesn't have a recognizable identity in the same way. In spite of,
it's hard to. And what I get from this movie is it's hard to pin down, even for people that live there.
Yeah,
and have grown up there their whole lives.
Yeah,
because no matter how old you are, it's changed since when you
exactly
were born.
Exactly. So critics love this. I don't think you need to be a critic to appreciate what this movie sets out to do. You only need to be a person who appreciates film. And if that describes you, I think you'll love the fact that this examines the place where movies are made and this city that serves as a setting for so many different films. I think you can't divorce show business from Los Angeles. And
can't do it.
Here's a movie that proves it. So it's my final pick. It's going on the shelf for our show business theme.
Excellent.
It won't be easy to put away these sequined outfits that we're both wearing.
It's going to be hard to get it off, to be honest.
Right, yeah. Tight in the crotch region. But here we are at the end of our show business discussion, and the 6 films we chose for tonight's theme are Hearts of Darkness, One Cut of the Dead, Tropic Thunder, Showgirls, Singin' in the Rain, and Los Angeles Plays Itself.
If you like websites, go to rewindvideopod.com, where you can drop us a line, get on our mailing list, or find us on social media, like Letterboxd, where I log every movie that I watch.
I need to be better at that.
You do.
I do.
Yeah, our customers are livid.
All right. I'm gonna pick up the slack. So from here, we're going to stick with business, but lose the show. In our next episode, look for us to discuss how business is done. As usual, we'll have 6 films to recommend. In the meantime, feel free to stop by the counter for a movie to watch. And of course, we will see you next time.
Be kind, recommend.